live. Hey everybody. So we are in Exodus chapter 8 tonight. Last week we studied the first plague of God's judgment against Egypt for the crimes and sins against the children of Israel, turning them from friend to enemy in just a couple of hundred years, throwing away the friendship they had with them at the end of Genesis and all that God had done to save the Egyptians through Joseph being the vizier and all that, that all we discussed at the end of Genesis. We also discussed the hardening of Pharaoh's heart and how this is still something that can affect people today when we close our lives off from God. The first plague, of course, was turning the Nile River to blood, a slap right back in the face to Pharaoh by insinuating that the God of the Hebrews was killing or attacking the Nile River god. I believe that's happy. It's not happy, like happy. It's, I think it's Hapai is the way it's pronounced. This was just the start of sorrows, though. And, of course, we see a very stubborn Pharaoh Thutmose III running back to his palace and hardening his heart. This week we are going to continue looking into the plagues, so let's turn to Exodus chapter 8 and start in verse 1 through 4. Emma, will you start us off?
And the Lord spake unto Moses, Go unto Pharaoh, and say unto him, Thus saith the Lord, Let my people go, that they may serve me. And if thou refuse to let them go, behold, I will smite all thy borders with frogs. And the river shall bring forth frogs abundantly, which shall go up and come into thine house, and into thy bedchamber, and upon thy bed, and into the house of thy servants, and upon thy people, and into thine ovens, and into thy kneading troughs. And the frogs shall come up both on thee, and upon thy people, and upon all thy servants.
So 7 days has passed. The Nile River and the other sources of water have turned back to normal. They're no longer blood. The Lord called Moses to continue this righteous move of wrath toward the Egyptians. And let's also remember, for, again, anybody who has issue with parts of Scripture like this, remember that even in the New Testament, Romans 12:19 says, Vengeance is mine, says the Lord. Moses is to go to Pharaoh and tell him, Let my people go. I've been waiting to say that for like weeks now. Let my people go. If he doesn't, then the next thing that's going to happen is a bunch of frogs are going to come all over Egypt. Frogs in his house, frogs in his bed, frogs in his oven, and bunches and bunches and bunches of frogs. So, Sam, will you read verse 5 and 6?
Then the Lord said to Moses, Tell Aaron, stretch out your hand with your staff over the streams and canals and ponds, and make frogs come up on the land of Egypt. So Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and the frogs came up and covered the land.
So Aaron and Moses did just as God commanded. Since Pharaoh did not relent in this intended timeline of, hey, let my people go, he didn't respond. So here comes the curse. Frogs come leaping out of the water, probably again the Nile, so many that they filled the land. And the thought just occurred to me that this sounds a lot like when Jesus when he first meets Peter and all of them, and he does the miracle of causing the fish to fill up the boat. Mm-hmm. That's what, he just causes them to leap out. Well, I'm just imagining Aaron is just like, frogs appear. and millions of frogs come leaping out of the Nile. Now,
it's bubbly.
Ooh. Now, we have to ask ourselves, why frogs? All right, because I don't think there's a person in this room who doesn't like frogs. Like, any of you guys here? Yeah? No?
They're very cute.
I like watching the frogs on the window, the ones that are sticky this time of year, and they stick to the window and you can see them, like their underbellies and stuff. That's kind of cool. I like that. Don't have much of an issue with frogs. Now, snakes, spiders, yeah, I got an issue with those. Frogs, not so much.
They're loud.
They are loud.
They're so cute.
They're not as loud as cicadas, though.
No,
they're
but you have a whole
babies.
bunch,
I
though.
can hold them in my hands and let my kids pet them.
Okay, so
Our bull-
Crystal likes,
We have bullfrogs in the back of our house after it rains, and it is obnoxiously loud.
huh. So, why frogs? Well, like I said last week, each of these plagues, theologically, is linked to a false god of Egypt. Now, my buddy Hammond here, me and him had a discussion today about how these are also linked to creation, and I am going to
don't
research that.
Yeah, don't go too deep into that right
Don't
now.
go too deep into it. I won't. I'm not going to go too deep into it right now. But I did find some interesting stuff that we're going to cover after we study the 10 plagues. But how with the Nile god, with the Nile being turned into blood, that was an attack on the false deity Hapi, the Nile god. Well, now for the second one, the quote-unquote false Egyptian god that's being attacked here is, I'm trying not to butcher these words, Heket, which is the god of fertility, who was also represented by the goddess Hathor. If anybody has ever watched Stargate SG-1, that, anyways, sorry, my nerd is showing, they are represented by a frog. It literally looked, frog's head, person's body. That's what the statue was representative of.
I feel like the frog god should be called Hoppy.
Yeah, you would think, but no, it's Heket. Now, if they worshipped a god who takes the form of a frog, you would think this wouldn't be much of a plague. You would think to them, they would think, oh, it's
Blessing.
raining our god. But simply said, they were infested with frogs. They were everywhere. They may have worshipped a frog god, but I'm sure they didn't want it in their houses, their beds, their ovens, and their cooking bowls. Frogs were everywhere. I don't think the Egyptians, if they thought that herding animals was a lowly job and that the only people who should do that were slaves, I imagine they weren't accustomed to eating frogs. So I'm sure that to them this was very obnoxious. So with this plague, there's also the theological implication that goes to the heart of what God's message to Pharaoh was. In the first plague, God struck to the heart of Pharaoh for his sin of killing the innocent Hebrew children. Talking about how some theology look at how he turned the Nile to blood, and how in the first chapter of Exodus, the Hebrew boys were thrown into the Nile River and killed, and how this was symbolically God bringing that sin back up, saying, hey, you killed the innocents, and now I have given you the blood of your enemies to drink. Kind of like how we talked about in Revelation, that is also the case when 2/3 of the world's freshwater sources are turned to blood, and God specifically announces a judgment on the Antichrist and the false prophet, saying, you killed all the innocents, all the martyrs who are killed during the tribulation, all those who come to faith in Christ after the rapture. We talked about how Christians are killed after that time, and God was showing that, I am punishing you for that. Well, same thing here. So with the second one, with God having all these frogs leaping and annoying the Egyptians, it is an attack on their pagan fertility practices, since Heket was the god of fertility. God showing that he is the one true God, and he is the only one who commands the fertility of this world, that it is not through their power that the world keeps turning and babies keep being born. Just like how Jeremiah 1:5 states, I knew you before you were in the womb, or when you were formed in the womb. God showing his ultimate authority over life and death, just as we studied in Genesis how God brought forth the first man and woman.
Could this mean like the land too?
Yeah, it could be, because with cattle and with farming. Is that what you mean? Like
Yeah, so like vegetation and stuff
Yeah,
like that. Could it be just fertility in general, or do you think it's more?
it might be, but I think they had other pantheon. Like
Oh,
Egyptian
okay.
religion had a huge, massive amount of gods. So there was it's like the Greek, like how you have a god for this, a god for rain, a god for sunshine, a god for they had a god for everything. And some of their gods were for multiple things. So this may have been just birth fertility, but essentially on a broader spectrum, God is saying, no, your false god does not control this, I do.
Okay.
Which leads us to Crystal. Will you read verse 7?
But the magicians did the same thing by their occult practices and brought frogs up unto the land of Egypt.
Because
Was
they
it just
wanted
7?
more frogs.
Yep. yeah, just 7. So Pharaoh calls the sorcerers to perform a copycat in this second plague, just like how they turned the fresh water into blood in the first one. And they also copied the snake, how Aaron laid down the staff and it turned into a snake. Well, they did likewise. So they also performed a copycat of this miracle and make a bunch of frogs appear, which does nothing more than add to the growing problem they have of lots of frogs everywhere.
Also, how do they know for sure they made them? Because if there were already frogs everywhere, it's like hiding the rabbit in your hat. What if it's already there?
If it's not dark magic, I'm assuming that one of them just had like frogs like tucked in his robes, like, behold, we make frogs. Like, I really hope that's what happened.
A lot of this stuff though was like apothecary work, and they would do like tinctures and things like that to coax, more like baiting them.
Yeah. That's why, like, I think, Bree, you were the one who talked about, it'd be really funny if with the staff, if they had like a staff they just like
A hollow.
untook and like dumped a snake out of it.
It was like. Yes.
Like, I really feel like these guys were very dramatic.
I know, and
during
then I was
this.
just thinking, because what Egypt needed was more frogs.
Yep. Crystal, will you read 8 through 10?
Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, appeal to the Lord to remove the frogs from me and my people. Then I will let the people go and they can sacrifice to the Lord. Moses said to Pharaoh, you may have the honor of choosing. When should I appeal on behalf of you? Your officials and your people, that the frogs may be taken away from you and your house, remain only in the Nile. Did you say 10 too?
Yeah, 10 also.
Tomorrow he answered, Moses replied, as you have said, so that you may know that there is no one like the Lord our God.
And Bree, will you read 11 and 12?
The frogs will leave you in your houses, your officials, and your people. They will remain only in the Nile River. So Moses and Aaron left Pharaoh's palace, and Moses cried out to the Lord about the frogs he had inflicted on Pharaoh.
And Hannon, will you read 13 through 15?
The Lord did according to the word of Moses, and the frogs died out of the houses, and the courts, and the fields. So they piled them in heaps, and the land became foul. But when Pharaoh saw that there was relief, he hardened his heart and did not listen to them, as the Lord had said.
So now we see a new cycle. Pharaoh, I'm sure, was impressed with his sorcerers, being able to bring out more frogs. But he seemed to be a little taken back by this act of God. He asked Moses to negotiate with the Lord to get rid of the frogs and to make them only be confined to the river. If Moses did this and the frogs go away, then Pharaoh promises to let the people go worship their Lord in the wilderness. Pharaoh uses the word entreat, meaning a negotiation. This was not a reflection of conviction or repentance on his part. It is more like when people believe they can say to God, well, Lord, if you do this, and I'll do that. And sadly, that is something that some are guilty of today, thinking that God can be negotiated with, controlled. There you go. He said,
It's prevalent in the churches.
and I've used this analogy many times in sermons that the Bible is a magic lamp, and when you rub it, God comes out and says, "Poof! What do you need?" Like Robin Williams and Aladdin. And that is not how it works. So don't get it wrong here. Pharaoh is not being convicted in his heart. He is not repenting. He just simply thinks that this is a business transaction. Moses holds Pharaoh to his words that tomorrow, which this would make 3 days that this plague was around at this point now, that they'll be gone. But Moses reiterates that the only reason it'll be done like this is to show Pharaoh that the Lord God of the Hebrews is the one true God and there is no one like him. So Moses then went out praying to God that the frogs would go away. Moses praying for his enemies' relief so the children of Israel could go free. The frogs die out, they are gathered together, and we find out this plague has an aftermath, that they stunk. It was a really bad smell. I don't know how many frogs, but could you just imagine the ground just littered with frogs, and then you have to burn them up? That
So I
probably
would not want to scoop them either. That would be
Yeah.
really tough.
it was a really bad
I don't
smell.
even want to pick up a good frog.
However, when Pharaoh got his promise of relief, all he did was turn his back on his promise to Moses, and his heart was further hardened. Any questions so far? All right, let's continue on. Emma, will you read 16 and 17?
And the Lord said unto Moses, saying unto Aaron, Stretch out thy rod, and smite the dust of the land, that it may become lice throughout all the land of Egypt. And they did so, for Aaron stretched out his hand with his rod, and smote the dust of the earth, and it became lice in man, and in beast. All the dust of the land became lice throughout all the land of Egypt.
Who's ever had lice? That's nice, right? So Pharaoh broke his promise. It makes my head itchy just thinking about it. Pharaoh broke his promise to release the Hebrews, so Moses is commanded to continue these judgments to the Egyptians. Aaron reaches out to the sand of the land and strikes it, and as the dust kicks up, it turns into lice. Yeah, this shouldn't be surprising since, God did form man from the dust of the earth, so it's not out of reaches that God can create anything out of nothing. So with blood, okay, that was an inconvenience, but, they found a way around it. Frogs, okay, that was bad, but, it wasn't really that bad. But this one, a real plague of inconvenience. Lice. Millions and millions of lice everywhere. I imagine everyone walking around, ooh, it makes me itchy. I imagine everyone walking around Egypt incessantly just itching their heads and their body. Theology explains that the Egyptian deity under attack here is Newt, which is the Egyptian god of the stars, skies, and cosmos. And the idea here is that when he flicks the sand, it's not just like a little poof. It's like almost like a dust storm coming over Egypt and blankets the city in ice.
Sand
Yeah.
we have on our beaches just turned and just started swarming.
Yes. So it's almost like a dust cloud of just sand, but it's not sand, it's lice, blanketing Egypt. Also, another explanation is perhaps that all the Egyptian gods were under attack with this one, because the priest who would perform religious duties in Egypt weren't able to perform their duties because the lice made them ritually impure in Egyptian religious practices. Also, this plague came without warning at all. If you'll notice that it just happens. He doesn't go to Pharaoh and say, hey, if you don't do this, then lice will come tomorrow. No.
It's almost like because he turned his back, he automatically got it.
And that's exactly what it is. He broke his promise, so it immediately happens.
So, my Bible says gnats. Are those interchangeable?
have no explanation for that one.
Sand fleas are mosquitoes.
Yeah, sand fleas is probably similar to.
So, is
Tiny
that,
annoying bugs
Yeah.
that fly.
So flying lice.
flying. So I guess it.
I'm not sure because we're going to see in the next one also that there are interchangeable words. But yeah, so I'm not sure
Probably because they're so
if lice,
tiny.
gnats, but
Because lice and gnats are both incredibly small.
I imagine very small and
Annoying
very
and bitey.
annoying. Yeah, bitey. Yeah. This is not just.
It's just like I've been
Yeah.
thinking about it.
Like no seals.
What you got?
Meaning dubious. Either gnats swarm, filio origin, in most moderns, it says, as late Hebrew plural equals maggots and especially lice. Absolute.
So this is like the no-see-ums?
The what?
The no-see-ums, the tiny little bugs that bite you
Oh.
on your face.
But yeah, so it's kind of multi-versatile. It can have a whole bunch of.
So you need to say something tiny.
Tiny.
The Jews and Josephus, without much probability, explain it to mean lice, and the Talmudists also use the singular for a louse. So
So
The
lice.
singular of lice is louse.
Louse.
Yes.
We're lousy with lice.
I don't think it's possible to have a singular louse. Because they infest you.
Yeah,
They
we're
do.
family.
They are family.
Do
Okay,
we-
now we are family.
Read 18 and 19. Who read last?
Emma, right?
Emma, you read 18 and 19, right?
later at 16, 17.
Oh, 16 and 17. Sam, will you read 18 and 19?
But when the magicians tried to produce gnats by their secret arts, they could not, since the gnats were on people and animals everywhere. The magicians said to Pharaoh, "This is the finger of God." But Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he would not listen, just as the Lord had said.
So, something new with this plague. So the magicians were called by Pharaoh to counsel him and try to replicate the lice. They can't. They're stumped. And now with this one, I really do. This is how I picture it. I picture them picking up sand and going, poof, and it just falling and nothing happened.
It almost kind of sounds like, okay, so this one came without warning because he did deliberately disobey.
Yeah.
He said he would do something
They couldn't
and went
prepare
against
him.
it. It's almost like they couldn't copy it because that was like a wrath.
Yeah, yeah. But they can't do it. So we will see from here on out, there's nothing else they can do. They're useless. And their only explanation is something that Pharaoh refuses to see, that the God of Hebrews is more powerful. But of course this hardens Pharaoh's heart. Crystal, will you read 20 and 21?
What did you say?
20 and 21.
Okay, the Lord said to Moses, "Get up early in the morning and present yourself to Pharaoh. When you see him going out to the water, tell him, 'This is what the Lord says. Let my people go, so that they may worship me. But if you will not let my people go, then I will send swarms of flies against you. Your officials, your people, your houses, the Egyptians' houses will swarm with flies, and so will the land where they live.'"
And Bree, will you read 22 and 23?
But this time I will spare the region of Goshen where my people live. No flies will be found there. Then you will know that I am the Lord and that I am present even in the heart of your land. I will make a clear distinction between my people and your people. This miraculous sign will happen tomorrow.
So, the Lord commands Moses to go to Pharaoh again. It plays out like before, early in the morning, when Pharaoh goes out to the Nile, probably like we discussed last week, to go bathe. He is confronted by Moses and Aaron, and they tell him the same thing. Let my people go. And I love verse 21, or else. Or else, swarms of flies will descend upon Egypt. But this time, the Lord specifically commands Moses to let Pharaoh know that the land of Goshen, where the Hebrew slaves live, no fly will enter that section. I feel like we need that over the entire southern border of the United States. We need that hedge of protection. No flies.
I feel like it's like a biosphere. Like it's just like one of those shields that's just like invisible.
But no fly will affect. So with this plague, God is differentiating the Hebrews from the Egyptians. Now, I don't think the Hebrews would have been affected at this point regardless, but I think God is making the distinction to Pharaoh. This is, again, Pharaoh probably was obviously not believing the God of the Hebrews. He's just being annoyed by Moses, and Moses is telling him, so that way you know that my God's real, this is going to start happening. You're going to now see that my people are fine, and your people are the ones that's suffering. So really it's putting a nail in the coffin for Pharaoh that you're now causing the suffering of your people. God gives warning that Pharaoh has 24 hours to release the Hebrews, or this plague will come the next day. And did I have you read just 22, right?
23 also.
Oh, you read 23? Will you also read 24?
Just 24?
Yep.
And the Lord did just as he had said. A thick swarm of flies filled Pharaoh's palace and the houses of his officials. The whole land of Egypt was thrown into chaos by the flies.
So, God does just as he says, because Pharaoh does not relent in those 24 hours, and a swarm of flies envelops Egypt. Now, these are not your garden variety house flies. These are not the ones that come into our house that, come in from the trash and mess like that. That is not what this is. This is the word translated from the Septuagint is the dog fly, a blood-sucking insect, the
like a mosquito.
ecomon fly, which is big. This fly deposits its eggs on living creatures so the larvae can feast on the flesh.
Oh, that's the one that does it in cows. You see, like the big bulges coming out of the cows' ears and stuff.
This was an attack on the Egyptian god. Sam, you're going to love this one. Shu. The god of the air. Of course, the people of Egypt were also under attack with this one. Lice is one thing, but imagine being bit by thousands of mosquitoes. It's more than an aggravation. Can you imagine the possibility of all the infections that probably happen from the scratching with that? And probably the overwhelming, because I know, I have reactions if I get bit up a whole bunch by ants and stuff, where I'll have a fever and mess like that. This was really causing some suffering at this point. So we're seeing a progression with these. Hannon, will you read 25 through 28?
Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron and said, "Go, sacrifice to your God within the land." But Moses said, "It is not right to do so, for we will sacrifice to the Lord our God what is an abomination to the Egyptians. If we sacrifice what is an abomination to the Egyptians before their eyes, will they not then stone us? We must go 3 days' journey into the wilderness and sacrifice to the Lord our God as he commands us." Pharaoh said, "I will let you go, that you may sacrifice to the Lord your God in the wilderness. Only you shall not go very far away. Make supplication for me."
So this plague really seems to finally be a boiling point for Pharaoh. He tells Moses and Aaron, "Go, sacrifice to your God in this land, in the Egyptian land," meaning either Goshen or another part of Egypt, but not the wilderness. He's trying to, again, negotiate. Moses follows up with telling Pharaoh, we can't do that. That's not what our God commanded us to do, and also won't your people stone us for that. This would be violating their God's commands, and they're not going to negotiate with him. Pharaoh relents, saying, "Fine, you can go into the wilderness, but just don't go too far." Please intercede to your God for me about these plagues. Emma, will you read 29 and 30?
And Moses said, Behold, I go out from thee, and I will entreat thee, Lord, that the swarms of flies may depart from Pharaoh, from his servants, and from his people tomorrow. But let not Pharaoh deal deceitfully any more in not letting the people go to sacrifice to the Lord. And Moses went out from Pharaoh and entreated the Lord.
And Sam, will you read 31 and 32?
And the Lord did what Moses asked. The flies left Pharaoh and his officials and his people. Not a fly remained. But this time also Pharaoh hardened his heart and would not let the people go.
So Moses continues his talk with Pharaoh, telling him that he will go to the Lord and intercede on Egypt's behalf about these plagues, and the flies will depart from Egypt the next day. But that Pharaoh must keep his promise and not be speaking to him deceitfully only to get these plagues to end. Moses prays to God. The flies leave Egypt just as promised, but Pharaoh turns his heart from this and is hardened even further. As we wrap this chapter up, again, I want to look at this story, and for anybody who has an issue with the wrathfulness of God in this story, I want us to take away a lesson today from this. God's giving Pharaoh chance after chance after chance to deliver on the promise of releasing the Hebrews from slavery. God doesn't simply just kill him or wipe them out like he did with Sodom and Gomorrah in Genesis. That's a whole other story, and we talked about that before. So if anybody has any questions about that, feel free to comment. And so far, yes, these plagues have been an issue, but remember that in Scripture, no one has died. Revelation tells us that God stands at the door of the heart of people knocking, asking to be let in. Scripture also teaches that God knows the heart of every person. Pharaoh, after witnessing all that has happened so far, continues to turn to man's explanation and his own self-proclaimed deity rather than witnessing the truth of God that is being unfolded in his eyes. And that's something we touched on a lot in Genesis, is to lean on God's understanding and not our own. Yet God is still giving him chance after chance. 10 of them. 10 chances to relent of this. And really 11 if you count the whole snake thing. Just to say, if you think you're being given a chance today to repent, come to faith in Christ. It's not too late, to make that decision today. I'm not here trying to do altar call, but if you learn anything with the story of Pharaoh, God, and Moses, is that don't let your heart be hardened and miss the opportunity of God's love.
Also, this whole idea that God is different in the Old Testament.
Yeah,
It's such a bad argument because yes, God is love, 100%.
yeah,
But we also serve a just and holy God, and as a just God, things cannot be let slide because that's unjust. If you let one person slide, you gotta let everyone slide.
yeah,
And we know that God is very much by the rules and by the laws. And it's a whole thing, as you see, like with Pharaoh, like how you said with, at this point, the things that are occurring, the people will realize it's on Pharaoh. It's kind of that whole thing. It's like he's a just God, and it's showing the sins and wrongdoings of one person doesn't just affect one person.
Yeah.
It affects a community, it affects a family, it affects a group. But God's justice will be served one way or another. And also to the people who do evil in today's, even though it seems like the evil prosper, like he talks about in Jeremiah and everything, ultimately they will be dealt justice if they don't come to Christ.
One final thing I want to bring up about this plague also, these groups of plagues, and why I think they were kind of grouped together in one chapter with the frogs, the lice, and the flies. Again, not a single person died, showing again how some may say, well, how dare God, do this, or I can't believe that a loving God would do this. Understand again, no one was killed. These are more annoying than anything to the Egyptian on a cosmic scale, but really all it's meant to do is God is trying to show Pharaoh who he is, and showing that Pharaoh each time just keeps hardening his heart instead of turning toward God's truth.
Well, and he's a loving God.
Yeah.
He's trying to rescue.
And he's trying to rescue his people.
Like,
who,
he's not going to let them suffer.
And I talked about this when we talked about how the Pharaoh at that time took the all the male children who had survived and was just throwing them into the Nile River. Again, we read stories like that and say, oh, that's bad. But really, if you equate this, this was a genocide of a people. This equates to the same horrors, again, in our most recent history of the Holocaust. It's a what do they call it? It's not a program, program against the Jewish people, which is essentially a what's the word I'm looking for? Not an annihilation, a persecution against the Jewish people, and that's what this was. That is what the Pharaoh is doing, because I'm sure that many Hebrews, as large as God's promise was to make them as numerous as the stars of the sky, as he had promised Abraham, I'm sure that a lot of Hebrews probably died during their enslavement. Again, I joke and talk about, some of the Ten Commandment movies and stuff like that. There's this one scene, again, I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, how there was an older Hebrew lady. It's like there was a scene they were hauling massive rocks up this canyon-looking thing to build something. And there was a Hebrew woman caught in these rocks and was about to be crushed. And that's when they bring Joshua in the story. And Joshua is trying to pull her out, and the Egyptian slave masters are just whipping him, trying to just get him out of the way, because he's like, but she's going to be crushed. We don't care. Because they didn't. They wanted to kill the Hebrews. But this also reminded me a lot of the fifth trumpet wrath, just how I see a parallel between these 10 plagues and, of course, the wraths of the tribulation. And how the fifth trumpet wrath in Revelation is when the scorpion-looking demons get released from the bottomless pit to torture mankind for 5 months.
Is this the bottomless pit in the Nile?
Huh? I don't know.
Wasn't it in the Nile? I don't know.
That's another story.
Or is that or is it the angels are locked up in the Nile?
The angels.
The
The angels. Oh, okay, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
Yeah.
there are specific angels. No. Euphrates, isn't it?
Oh, is it Euphrates?
Yeah. That's okay. But yeah, so that is chapter 8 in a nutshell. Join us next week as we go into chapter 9, into plagues 5, 6, and 7, I think. Yep, 5, 6, and 7. As we continue the 10 plagues of Egypt. If you have any questions about this or any other topic of the Bible, feel free to comment in the video down below, or you can always message me on Facebook directly. I'm Eddie Grissett, or Edward Grissett, I think is who I am on Facebook.
Yeah.
Or you can always reach out to us at our email, guardiansofchristministries@gmail.com. And if you're watching this on YouTube, again, feel free to comment below this video any questions or comments you may have. God bless. Have a wonderful week, and see you guys next time.